And we continue at 2:05 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang's in New Mexico.
Here's a strange one. The mayor of Arcadia in Southern California, it turns out she was engaged to a Chinese spy.
Wait, a female politician was engaged to a male spy?
Yes.
Okay, that's the reverse of Eric Swalwell.
Yes, it is.
Although they weren't really engaged. They were just, having a good time.
We'll have more on that story later.
I wonder, when Eric Swalwell slept with the spy, I wonder how discreet she was. Was it something that most intelligent humans couldn't pick up on, or was it like Kim Jong-un in a dress?
Well, if you're a spy, you're supposed to be very good at deception.
I don't know. Not all of them are Tokyo Rose. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is the host of the Jason Rantz Show, which airs on Seattle's Red 770 AM 770, the author of What's Killing America Inside the Radical Left's Tragic Destruction of Our Cities, which is available at Amazon, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, and wherever you buy your favorite books. You can get him online at seattlered.com and follow him on X at Jason Rantz. Jason Rantz, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, thanks so much for stopping by. So much to talk about. The first thing, I want to read for you a tweet that was put out by Mark Halperin, who is a reporter that covers politics in Washington, a guy who really has his finger on the pulse, I think, better than just about anyone. And he put out a tweet based on his reporting regarding the upcoming midterm elections. Here is what he had to say. Last night on Capitol Hill, the senior Trump political command briefed its core team on the midterms. Some of what occurred was previously reported by others. Here is a more detailed account. According to one of the attendees at the meeting at the Capitol Hill Club, the group was served a chicken and steak buffet. Seems good to me. The program went on for almost 2 hours, starting at 5:30 in the evening. This was a veteran group, not panicked or shaken, just focused on the work and the task at hand. There were about 75 to 100 people in the room. Many cabinet members were there, including Scott Bessent, Howard Lutnick, RFK, Sean Duffy, along with most of their senior aides. The meeting was hosted by Susie Wiles, who spoke briefly. The pollster and strategist, Tony Fabrizio, presented with about 25 slides on the data on what voters care about, the demographics, the issues, what messages resonate, and what does not. The economy will be the issue in the election, he said. Messages that break through include banning stock trading for Congress, transparency on health insurance data, including on pricing and claims reimbursement, lowering prescription drug costs, and the Trump tax cuts. Housing affordability is a huge issue for voters, especially for young people. Taking credit for closing the border does not resonate much. Men, moderates, true independents, and Hispanic voters are the true persuadable voters. His message was not pessimistic. He made recommendations to spend time on podcasts and social media more than national news interviews. Paid media should go on targeted media, not broadcast or even cable. Facebook is still king for voters, then Instagram and TikTok. There are currently 6 targeted House races and 7 key Senate races. The only way Republicans will lose the Senate majority is if Democrats take 50 House seats. Then political czar James Blair spoke and presented the historical data of how rare it is for a president's party to not lose a lot of seats in a midterm. Tennessee's 7 special was going to be lost before a huge push for Election Day, from which they have taken lessons about messaging and grassroots. Trying to argue about wages being up will not help. Voters have to feel it, he said. He acknowledged that Donald Trump will do what he wants to do, say what he wants to say, not be data-driven. Everyone else has to stay on message and be driven by the data. In effect, 2 separate but related campaigns. They expect Democrats will run in large part on the Stop Trump message. Your thoughts on all of that?
I mean, that's pretty straightforward. I think pretty accurate. Obviously, I don't have any special insight into the data that was presented yesterday, but generally speaking, two things are true at once. Number one, there are certain kinds of messaging that obviously works with voters, regardless, frankly, of their identities, both ideologically, gender, whatever it happens to be. On the other hand, it's an uphill battle for the party that's in power in the midterm. We know that. They paid close attention to Tennessee 7, which probably most people don't even remember, but this was a election back in December. It was incredibly tight, and a Republican was able to pull that out over the Democrat, despite all of the historical realities, even in a place like Tennessee, simply because they had their messaging on point. One takeaway from this shouldn't necessarily be something that we just write off and simply say, well, the president is not going to be on message because the president does what he does. That's true, but someone needs to get to the president to make sure, and I think Susie Wild is probably a really good person to do that, get to the president to make sure that when he's going off message just a little bit, he's still somewhat in the atmosphere of what it is they want to push, because they've got so much on their side that they can run on. And when they're not on message, you're just giving an easy win to the Democrats to push whatever talking point that they're pushing. And, that's frustrating, I think, because a lot of people, including the president himself, will know that his instincts are almost always correct. But when you are running up against historical trends, instincts don't always matter. Sometimes you just have to do what the data tells you to do and hope that you're able to push forward. I think the president just needs to do that.
It seems to me like there's two issues going on right now. There's one issue that is really two separate, distinct issues, and that is the economy is fine, but the cost of living is hurting people. So even though you look at the unemployment rate and you go, okay, that's pretty good, or you look at the stock market and you go, okay, that's really good, or you look at the AI industry and where they're projected to go in the coming years and you go, okay, that's fantastic, and you see all of these great things happening with the economy, but if people still look at the cost of a rental car and they go, oh my God, they're asking me to pay what for a Nissan Altima? People lose their minds. And you can see it happening in any number of ways where, no one, at least in my world, thinks that they're going to be on the street because they're going to lose their house and they're going to lose their jobs. However, if you have a group of people and you're trying to decide what to do for dinner and you go, hey, why don't I cook and everyone come over here and we can drink my booze and eat my food? In the years past, you'd get pushback because everyone's a Karen. Everyone's a picky eater. Oh, I don't eat fish. Oh, I don't eat pork. Oh, I don't eat this. I don't eat that. Let's just go to a restaurant where everyone can order their own thing. Now people look at it and they go, okay, I don't want to spend $14 for a drink and I don't want to spend $40 for a steak. So I'll eat whatever slop you're serving. And things like that have changed, it seems to me. And the economy and the cost of living are just two different things, and they need to just wrap their head around that.
Sure, but that's not going to happen. Right? Look, the reality is people have always viewed, regardless of who's in the White House, they view their personal economics, the personal financial situation differently than looking at it on paper or how Wall Street looks at it. That's never, ever, ever going to change. We all have to basically accept that because, again, it's kind of a losing battle. You don't have to lose that battle, though, because just because people view those two issues separately, they're still related, which makes it a heck of a lot easier to argue one particular point. And eventually they all catch up. And in a lot of ways, it's just a waiting game. When you look at the past presidential election, clearly the economy was improving from where it was when it was at the worst of the worst due to COVID policies that Democrats implemented. But it was obviously coming back and it was on the upswing, but people weren't feeling that. Eventually they started to feel it, but it was a little bit too late to help Joe Biden. Trump has some timeline issues on his side, actually. He's clearly banking on April, which is just a few weeks away, getting these larger refund checks. Now, the tariff situation and what the Supreme Court decides could pose a wrinkle in what the president wants to do here. But clearly, every day that goes by, things are getting better and better and better, and people are going to start to feel it in a lot different ways. If you get this injection of a refund, even though it's not necessarily new money per se, but it's still felt that way to the average person, they're going to start to change the way they feel. You see wages continuously going up, inflation continuously coming down, and there's enough time between now and the midterms for the general mood about the economy and individual situations to become more aligned. And that helps the president, which is precisely why the Democrats stopped talking about affordability. Why is it that all of a sudden they're not really talking about affordability? Because they were talking about that nonstop about a month and a half ago while simultaneously talking about immigration. They were managing to talk about both of those issues. The president leans into the economic news, and all of a sudden the Democrats aren't talking about it anymore because he's making a compelling argument and people are starting to feel the changes. And so they're just shifting back into immigration. They're shifting back into ICE or fascist Nazis who are killing people on the streets. And they're shutting down a government for no real reason. And I think that that's the tell here, that, again, Republicans and the president can really take advantage of. And when they don't, they open themselves up to easy outs for the Democrats to take. And we shouldn't allow that, for them to take advantage of that.
We're speaking with Jason Rantz, who you can listen to on KTTH up in Seattle. And Jason, when you look right now at Gavin Newsom as a governor of California, as a guy who has a book that's out, he is running for president, clearly. He is a guy who has big ambitions. He was just in Germany trying to present himself as a world leader, not as a governor of a state, but as a world leader. You're starting to see some pushback coming from those on the left regarding Gavin Newsom as a potential Democratic nominee, where you've seen David Axelrod smack him a few times. We've seen John Morgan, who is a mega donor in that world, smack him around a few times. We've seen some social media certainly pushback coming from those on the left. When you talk to people in your state, you come from a blue state too, the state of Washington, certainly the city of Seattle just elected a socialist mayor, a mayor very similar to the one in Chicago and New York City. When you talk to the Democrats around you, how do they regard Gavin Newsom? Do they regard Gavin Newsom as someone who can lead the Democrats to the promised land, he can take back the White House? Or do they look at him as another problematic figure, another Kamala, another California latte drinking lefty who's going to lose another national election for the Democrats?
The thing is, I don't think people in Washington talk about Gavin Newsom at all. And that's the funny piece here. I obviously know who Gavin Newsom is because I work in media and I'm from California originally. I get paid to review all this stuff. But the average person, I don't think really understands who Gavin Newsom is. And that's why he's leaning into a lot of these stunts. He's going to various events, whether it's Davos or anything else. It's because he's trying to raise his profile. And yet national media treats Gavin Newsom as if he's some sort of a household name. And I don't actually think he's a household name, including in blue areas. They might have a general understanding of who he is, and maybe they'll catch him doing some interview on MSNBC or CNN or something. But I really don't think they have a huge grasp as to who he is. And I think part of the reason why you're seeing this pushback from some folks on the left is they don't want it to be a scenario in which he just walks into the nomination. That generally is a bad idea for whomever ends up becoming the nominee from either party. If they don't get bruised a little bit, if they don't get any kind of pushback, they're incredibly vulnerable. And we saw that specifically with Kamala Harris, who the first time she ran didn't even make it to Iowa. She was a weakened candidate, didn't even make it to the process. He has to get to the process and he has to defend himself. And I think people just are instinctively aware that the easier that walk is to the nomination, the least prepared they're going to be. And it'll be curious to see how the Republicans react, because you clearly have two standout potentials. J.D. Vance, because of his position probably the edge, but also Marco Rubio. The two of them together, probably unstoppable. There was a piece in the Wall Street Journal today, a columnist, a conservative columnist, but he points out that, man, good luck if you think anyone on the left is going to be in a strong position in this upcoming presidential election. Midterms are different, but the Democrats don't really have a strong bench, and him leaning into the stunts, Gavin Newsom leaning into the stunts rather than substance, is just going to harm him in the long term.
Over the weekend, we saw some surprising quotes from Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. Hillary Clinton acknowledged that mass immigration into the United States and the West from third world countries was a mistake, that we shouldn't have allowed that to happen. And then Barack Obama, in a podcast interview, talked about wokeism has gone too far and the Democratic Party is too old and they need to dump some of these people who have been around a long time and start nominating people who are younger and more in tune with the culture. What do you make of what those two had to say over the weekend?
I think what they're trying to do is course correct a little bit. And I don't know if it's going to work, because they're course correcting now, and their instincts are correct to course correct. They've gone way too far to the left and they're suffering as a result of that. But you still have to be very, very far to the left to win in a primary. So usually you start course correcting after you go through the primary process. And so I think what's going to end up happening is they're going to alienate a lot of progressive voters on the left, the base of the party, while not doing nearly enough to placate the actual regular voter. So they're going to end up going back to their crazy leftist positions, which then just confuses a bunch of people. They put themselves in a really, really tough spot. And I'm not complaining. I love that they're in a very, very tough spot. But they're dealing with something that Republicans, at least right now, don't really have to worry about.
Jason Rantz. You can follow him on X at Jason Rantz and listen to him on the radio in Seattle. And you can also get him online at seattlered.com. That's seattlered.com, where you can pick up his podcasts and information on his radio show. But definitely check him out when you're in the Pacific Northwest. Jason, thanks so much for stopping by. Always a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. It's been a long time.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
I spent the last few minutes trying to go through all of the Katie Porter emails that we got in the first hour. If you missed that first hour, get the podcast by searching for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts. And Artine has an idea. Hey, guys, great job as always. Can you mix Katie Porter's latest drop with one of her classics? Oh, I think we can do that. Let's see what that would be like.
I call it the shift gift. You can smell it right here.
You know what? Maybe reverse it.
You can smell it right here. I call it the shift gift.
There you go.
Now that's editing.
There is no substitute to standing here and smelling it and seeing it yourself.
I'll tell you, whenever we do a Katie Porter story, the mailbag just blows up.
I'm me.
And Randy, we're on the weekends in the Central Valley.
We do this show live every single day from noon to 3, and we thank you for listening to all 3 hours. If you're just joining us because you are trying to figure out what's going on over at KFI, welcome. We've been doing this show for like 7 years at noon to 3, and we're happy to have you. But we also have some replay hours that are packaged up for the evenings on KABC, for the early mornings on KSFO, and I put together a special Central Valley focused, although there's a lot of Katie Porter in it too, edition of the Fix California Hour that airs on KMJ in Fresno, Saturdays at noon. So if you're in the Central Valley, give it a listen, kmjnow.com, or tune into the radio, 580 AM, 105.9 FM. The Fix California Hour, Saturdays at noon on KMJ.
Well, the state's 911 system is a mess. We've done stories about the failures in Oakland, about the failures in Riverside County, about the failures in rural Northern California. And the state has spent a lot of money to try to figure out how to get the 911 system to a place where we're comfortable using it. Well, Randy, despite the fact that we spent a lot of money, we're not really seeing much in terms of results.
The state has spent the last 7 years and nearly $800 million trying to upgrade our 911 system to what they call Next Gen 911. And we have no idea when it's going to be done. And we are spending even more money on it. But that's why some members of the assembly would like an audit, because this program has been a disaster. For more, here's ABC 10 in Sacramento.
California Republicans are sounding the alarm on how much money was spent on California's next generation 911 system.
An assembly member has requested an audit into the spending, while a senator is pushing a bill to mandate more state reporting on the project. ABC 10.
Well, what's the point of that? We know from Julie Watts' reporting that even when you have audits, the legislature doesn't follow through with any of the recommendations.
Yeah, the information is great, but if you don't do anything with it, does it really matter?
ABC 10 State Matters political reporter Jenny Ha is here now to break it all down.
Yeah, so Jenny, tell us, we're talking about a lot of taxpayer dollars here, right?
Nearly $1 billion, and this is all money the state generates via a tax that any phone user in California pays.
Can't have failure here. Failure is not an option.
Nothing to show for it. We haven't updated our antiquated 911 system.
Republican legislators are demanding answers on the high cost and delayed implementation of California's next generation 911 system, a long promised update to the state's current 5 decades old legacy 911 system, which doesn't allow.
But, Gavin campaigned on his first run for governor, how he was going to be bringing California into the 21st century, and we were going to update all these antiquated departments, and really hasn't worked out.
No, and guess what? We are the home to Silicon Valley. How is it that we have the smartest minds on planet Earth in this state, and we can't figure out how to make a 911 system that works?
Which doesn't allow for technology like video streaming and photos.
Clearly failures that didn't allow that to happen, and it's just unacceptable.
As explained by the nonpartisan legislative analyst's office, the modernization of California's emergency response system is years in the making.
Very first, the beginnings of it were in 2010 in the Schwarzenegger administration.
This goes back that long?
Well, the failures of this state go back a long ways.
Very first, the beginnings of it were in 2010 in the Schwarzenegger administration. It evolved under the Brown administration and continued in the Newsom administration.
But it wasn't until 2019 the legislature dedicated funding, $130 million and ongoing. Since then, it spent over $455 million total on the project, with the California Office of Emergency Services, or Cal OES, spearheading efforts.
But we have nothing to show for it. Everywhere they rolled it out, it didn't work, and they have to keep going back to the drawing room.
No, and let's also look at Sacramento, because when cities are not compliant with what the state requires, they're theoretically supposed to do something about it. But as in the case with Oakland doesn't meet the state standards, but because they're not as awful as they used to be, they're allowed to continue operating.
Well, Gavin didn't want that to be another thing that he's directly responsible for.
Of course not.
It's unclear how much additional we'll need to spend to get to the point where we can transition away from the legacy 911 system.
That complete transition is now delayed to 2030, meaning the state has to continue paying for the legacy system and for individual dispatch centers to navigate the legacy to next-gen transition too.
This is how we get into these budget deficits. We commit all kinds of spending without any real thought of what's going to happen if it doesn't work.
No, so now we're what? We're paying for 2 systems?
Yes, we're paying for the one that doesn't work and the one that's so old it barely works.
That has cost $392 million since 2019. So, since 2019, California has spent $847.5 million on 911 systems overall.
They're going to make changes. They need the legacy system to continue. So they asked us if they could continue to spend that money.
The revenue source is tax dollars. Every phone user in California pays a monthly surcharge.
That's why your AT&T bill's so high.
The phone tax for your rotary phone, for your home and your phone inside your house. I guess you could have a rotary phone. That tax was supposed to go to pay for the Spanish-American War. That's why they put it on the books. You know how long ago that war was? You're still paying that tax?
Currently, it's at 41 cents, an amount set by Cal OES each fall.
To raise more money for their projects, they can up that tax. That is completely within their jurisdiction, correct?
It is, but there is an 80-cent limit that's been put on.
Where is the
problem? Oh, they'll find a way to raise that limit. There's already talk in Sacramento because a lot of cities, especially in Southern California, are hitting the limit of what you can actually raise sales taxes to, that they're just going to ask Sacramento to raise the limit.
Yeah, with the current makeup of the state legislature, do you think there's anyone up there who's willing to say no if some local government wants to raise taxes?
Where is the project now? Initially, Cal OES opted for a regional approach, dividing the state into regions with one statewide entity overseeing all operations.
And every region that they rolled it out, it was a mess.
Now they're shifting to the statewide model in the name of streamlining transition. And there was a roadblock with voice calls, despite success with other system upgrades like text to 911 services.
We're at an inflection.
So 911 didn't work if you tried to call them. But if you could send them a text with a fire emoji, well, then you're good to go.
So wait, so teenage girls can contact them, but no one else can?
We're at an inflection point where OES is trying to decide exactly how to proceed. They've put forward their transition plan.
And in a statement, a spokesperson for Cal OES says in part, quote, "We recognize the public's interest in the modernization of California's 911 system and welcome transparency and accountability, and we will fully comply with any approved audit." Now, the state's 911 advisory board is set to discuss this new plan at tomorrow's regularly scheduled quarterly meeting.
So it seems like for the time being, we're going to be paying for two 911 systems because we still are paying hundreds of millions of dollars for the new one, and it doesn't work.
And just keep in mind that we're doing this the next time you hear some politician talk about affordability. Well, one of the reasons that it costs a fortune to live here is because of the amount of taxes that you pay. One of the reasons that you have to pay a ton of taxes is they can't do anything right. So you're not paying for one 911 system that works. You're paying for two 911 systems that both don't work. Wrap your head around that one. So that's what's going on with 911. Randy, let's go back to something that you talked about earlier, which is that a local politician in Los Angeles County had very close ties to a Chinese spy, or at least a suspected Chinese spy.
Oh, it was more than close ties. She was engaged, but after it was revealed that he was a spy and convicted as a spy, she doesn't want to talk to the press about it.
You don't say.
For more, here is CBS LA.
Yes, we're heading to the San Gabriel Valley tonight, where a local mayor and an international spy operation happening.
The mayor. By the way, if you don't know where Arcadia is, it has Santa Anita, and that's about it.
Well, we all love the racetrack.
The mayor of Arcadia refusing to speak with us about her former fiancé, who was just sentenced to prison for being a Chinese spy.
CBS LA political reporter Tom Waite live in Arcadia for us, where the city council held a meeting for the first time since the sentencing. Tom?
And good evening to you, Juan and Rutabaga. This is such a strange and intriguing story. As you said, the mayor of Arcadia linked to now a convicted Chinese spy. We tried to ask her some questions about the sentence, but she refused to answer.
She doesn't want to just come out and say, I was duped.
I wonder if she's endorsing Eric Swalwell for governor.
Arcadia Mayor Eileen Wang.
No relation.
I was about to say, your relative's in some hot water.
Arcadia Mayor
Not my real last name, and I'm not really Chinese.
Arcadia Mayor.
You want to know the story? Go look at a podcast. I've told it enough times.
Arcadia Mayor Eileen Wang not taking questions about the sentencing of a convicted Chinese spy who she once referred to as her boyfriend and fiancé and who worked on her campaign.
Oh, he was also her campaign manager.
Wow, this man wore many hats.
Can you just give us your reaction to the sentence?
I don't have it.
Mayor Wang has not been accused of any wrongdoing in connection with this case involving the Chinese spy that began to unfold several years ago. Tuesday's council meeting was the first since the now convicted spy, Yao Ying's son, who also went by Mike's son, was sentenced to 4 years in prison for his covert actions on behalf of the Chinese government. The feds say starting in 2020, Sun operated a pro-Chinese Communist Party news website for the Chinese American community. Sun was also directed by Chinese officials to boost the campaign of an unidentified Southern California politician.
Oh, I want to know who that is.
Well, what interest would the Chinese government have in who's the mayor of Arcadia?
I mean, outside of Santa Anita, I don't know.
Isn't that small potatoes for a foreign government?
This is Wang talking about her relationship.
I mean, I think this was his way to get into some kind of seat of power, but it sure seems like they had other plans for what kind of influence they were going to be spreading in the San Gabriel Valley. The San Gabriel Valley, by the way, certain areas like the city of San Gabriel have a very high concentration of Chinese immigrants.
Well, maybe they thought that this woman would go on to the state legislature or the Congress.
This is Wang talking about her relationship with Sun at a council meeting from December of 2022.
To my fiancé, Director Mike's son, who walks streets with me every single day.
He walks the streets with her every single day. Mike's son does. I'm just the translator now.
You've been doing that a lot today.
Who is a real leader of me.
After Sun,
he's a real leader of you?
Whoa. So they're into S&M?
Who is a real leader of me.
After Sun was charged, Wang tried to distance herself from Sun.
Number one, he's not my fiancé.
Boy, things change fast.
Whoever wants to see he's my fiancé or former fiancé, please prove it.
The U.S.
I'm not going to translate that.
No, I don't think you need to.
Whoever wants to see he's my fiancé or former fiancé, please prove it.
The U.S. Attorney's Office would not confirm or deny whether they are investigating Wang, which is their standard rule. The LA Times has reported that she is not under investigation.
So what? They just looked at her and like, no, she was dumb enough to fall for this.
That's a defense. If you think that she's too dumb to be in on it, you can move on.
Still, she would not answer any of our questions. I just think it's important for people to understand just your reaction to this sentence.
I don't have the comments right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's outrageous. It's outrageous. I mean, her fiancé helped her with the campaign, got her elected. And
he was her leader.
According to her.
And he's literally convicted of being a foreign agent.
The feds say that Sun also tracked the movements of the president of Taiwan when she was here back in April of 2023, giving them real-time updates about what she was doing and where she was.
Okay, that's pretty wild.
I wonder what that's about.
Reporting live in Arcadia, I'm Tom Waite, CBS LA.
So there you go. The bizarre story of the mayor of Arcadia and her ex-fiance, the convicted Chinese spy.
Maybe that was the reason. Because, China has a real bee in their bonnet with Taiwan. And so if the leader of Taiwan is here meeting with dignitaries, and we know that they meet with politicians and government appointees, ambassadors, the like, and because she's a bold-faced name in terms of being a Chinese elected official in a big state like California, she would be invited to meet with the leader of Taiwan. So I guess if you're trying to track that individual's whereabouts and you want to know what's going on in secret meetings, because sometimes these politicians, they don't meet one-on-one with the leader of Taiwan. There'll be a group of them in a room and they'll all have a Q&A. So maybe through her, that's how the information was being relayed back to China, where she was the one who was providing that confidential information and she didn't even know she was doing it. because you just tell your spouse in pillow talk. And she's there talking to her leader. And little does she know that everything she tells her leader is going back to his leader who's sitting in Beijing.
Good night, honey. Good night, leader.
What are you doing, Arcadia? 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
John, there have been a lot of emails today, mostly in reaction to the new drops from gubernatorial candidate and former Congresswoman Katie Porter when she visited the Tijuana River Valley because of the environmental disaster and toxic waste that's down there.
You can smell it right here. There is no substitute to standing here and smelling it and seeing it yourself.
And this creative audience likes to come up with ways for me to mix and match all of our drops and create a combo drop. And Blair writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com with quite the combo drop here, where it is a hypothetical of what it would sound like if Katie Porter was on the stage, the debate stage, with Javier Becerra. Without further ado, here is the exchange.
Scrub it.
There is no substitute to standing here and smelling it and seeing it yourself.
But when you do the scrub,
you can smell it right here.
I'll tell you, it's a very different show when Katie Porter makes an appearance.
And I've got muse.
I've got to tell you, I am surprised that she is the first one to go to the Tijuana River out of all the candidates running for office. Because Tom Steyer is a guy who is an environmentalist. That's what he spends his money on, his political money. He's all about global warming. Well, if you're all about the environment and you're all about global warming, wouldn't you pay attention to something like this, in theory?
That's not what he cares about anymore. He apparently just told all the unions that the second he gets elected, he wants to raise taxes because that's what's important.
Yeah, and he's a billionaire, and you can raise taxes to whatever you want to raise him to, and it's not going to alter his life one iota. Someone told me that Steve Hilton went down there to that river before, that he may not have gone with that particular supervisor, but that he went down there and I guess put something up on social media about it. That wouldn't surprise me because he's a Republican and certainly he wants a secure border. So if you have waste coming from a foreign country that's polluting your country, for someone who wants secure borders, that would something that would be on your radar.
Currently, when I'm looking up stories that involve any gubernatorial candidates in that Tijuana River, only Katie's coming up.
There is no substitute to standing here and smelling it and seeing it yourself.
Well, the next time we have Steve Hilton on, if I remember, I'll ask him about that.
You'll ask if he smelled it?
You can smell it right here.
I don't know if I'll phrase the question exactly like that, but if I remember, I'll ask him about the river. People always get on me. Why didn't you ask him this? Why didn't you ask him that? And sometimes it's a legitimate issue. It's legitimate questions, and you're interviewing someone. You have a limited amount of time. Not all the questions pop into your head right then, and you write them down, and I always want to remember to ask those questions the next time, and then I forget again. What are you going to do?